Can't you see it? The world powered by solar and renewable energy. Here at Gray Bar, with years of renewables experience, we live in that world. Get in touch to see for yourself.
We are now ready to depart.
Book your visit at graybar.com. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
It's time. Time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
'49ers Web Zone No Huddle Podcast. We are part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Al Sacco here with you. Pro Bowl selections are in, and where does Kyle Shanahan rank amongst head coaches in the NFL? We're going to talk about both today. 49ers get 4 players to make the Pro Bowl. George Kittle, which this is his 6th selection. Kyle Juszczyk, his 9th. Nick Bosa, his 5th. And Fred Warner with his 4th overall selection. Looking at these guys, George Kittle had just an absolutely phenomenal year again for the Niners. He had broke 1,000 yards for the 4th time in his career. And he is one of how many tight ends here? He is one of only 5 tight ends in NFL history to accomplish that feat. Kelsey's done it 7 times. Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, and Jason Witten also did it 4 apiece. So Kittle has another Pro Bowl season with the Niners. He is on his way to really having a Hall of Fame career at this point. Kittle's been absolutely phenomenal. One of the best draft picks in 49ers history. The best tight end in 49ers history. I think that's pretty safe to say right now. The Niners have had some good ones, but Kittle is the best. He had 1,377 yards in 2018, 1,053 in 2019. He had 3 years where he didn't get 1,000. He did miss games in all of those years. 1,020 in 2023 and 1,079 this year with 8 touchdowns. I really think this year is one of his best seasons. He's been, from the word go, just great for the Niners, and he earns another Pro Bowl selection. Kyle Juszczyk with 9 total career Pro Bowl selections. Juszczyk caught 17 passes this year. There aren't a lot of fullbacks out there anymore, but good for Kyle, man. He's racking up the Pro Bowl selections. He's got 9 right now, which is a lot. 9 Pro Bowl selections is a lot. I don't care what you do. I don't care when you do it. If you're been a Pro Bowl 9 times as an NFL player, good for you, man. Fred Warner gets in, and Warner, I thought at the beginning of the season, those first 4 games, he was Defensive Player of the Year for me. He was flying around the field. The Niners won some of those games, I thought, because of Fred Warner. Then the ankle injury happened, and he wasn't Fred Warner. So he gets in, and with Warner, I mean, is it name recognition? Maybe. But he's still, Fred Warner is Fred Warner. He's a future Hall of Famer, and if he's kind of borderline with somebody else, I think people are going to put Warner in. And then Nick Bosa gets in. Bosa didn't hit 10 sacks this year. He's got 9.5, I believe. But he did miss 3 games. If he played the whole season, he would have had 10 sacks. And you just watch the impact that Bosa has when he's on the field. When Nick Bosa did not play, the Niners defense just was a shell of itself. They got absolutely destroyed against Buffalo, against Green Bay. And he makes such a difference when he's there. He's a great football player. To me, he's always deserving of being on a Pro Bowl. So those 4 guys make it. The Niners also got 4 alternates. Trent Williams, who again only played 10 games, didn't have a Trent Williams type season, but still Trent Williams, I guess. Brock Purdy's an alternate for all the slack he's been getting. He did throw for almost 3,900 yards this year in just 15 games. If he played a full season, he would have been well over 4,000. He's one of the alternates. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, and Jaden Daniels make it as quarterbacks. Maybe Baker Mayfield might have gotten snubbed there. But I don't have an issue with Purdy as an alternate, again, with the numbers. He played very well in the first half of the season as well. He trailed off. I think a lot of it had to do with his shoulder, but he's going to be a hot topic we're going to talk about anyway all off season. But Purdy makes it as an alternate. Leonard Floyd made it as an alternate, which I was a little surprised. He did have 8.5 sacks. Now, 5.5 of those came within a 4-game span. In 3 out of 4 games, he had 5.5 sacks. In the other 13 games, he had 3. So I don't know that he was consistently getting sacks this year, but he does make it maybe based on that sack number. And the last alternate, who to me, this is a snub to me, man. I'm a little annoyed with this. Deommodore Lenoir makes it as an alternate and not as a Pro Bowler. To me, I have an issue with that. Now, NFC Pro Bowler TDs allowed and passer rating against. This is be a Pro Football Focus. Jalen Johnson, 2 TDs allowed, 82.6 passer rating against. Byron Murphy, 4 TDs allowed, 78 passer rating against. JC Horn, 5 TDs allowed, 91.4 passer rating against. Devin Witherspoon, 1 TD allowed, 93.4 passer rating against. All respectable numbers. But Deommodore Lenoir, 0 touchdowns allowed, 72.6 passer rating against. My man did not allow a touchdown this season. Only 72.6 passer rating against him. To me, not only should he have been a Pro Bowler, I thought he would have been in the conversation for an All-Pro. I know that he would have made it, but maybe an All-Pro too, but at least in the conversation for that. For Lenoir not to get it, it's a big-time snub. I just wonder with the other names on the 49ers if he doesn't have the name recognition. Like we talked about Warner and Williams. They didn't have the years we're accustomed to because of injury, but they didn't have the years we're accustomed to. And I wonder with them, they say, oh, well, those guys are perennial Pro Bowlers and All-Pros. We're going to put them in. They're going to get in. But with Lenoir, maybe you don't know the name. He's not as well recognized yet anyway, so he doesn't get in. But I thought that was a shame. I hope there's a way that he can get there because Deommodore Lenoir deserved it. Deommodore Lenoir is the number 1 corner in this league, and he deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. So for him not to be there, man, that is a huge snub to me. But hopefully in the years coming up, he'll get there. Now, Pro Bowls in 49ers history, Jerry Rice has the most with 12. He has 12 Pro Bowls. Leo Nemolini, I can't even say the name, Nomolini, who was an offensive lineman in the 50s, had 10. Ronnie Lott had 9. Those are the most Pro Bowls in 49ers history. From there, you know who's next? Kyle Juszczyk. Kyle Juszczyk has 8. He's been in the Pro Bowl every single season as a 49er. He has 9 total in his career, 8 with the 49ers. Do with that what you will, but that's where it is. After that, Patrick Willis has 7. Joe Montana has 7. Steve Young has 7. Dave Wilcox has 7. Billy Wilson, Joe Staley, and now George Kittle have 6. So those are the most Pro Bowls in 49ers history. So again, good on Kyle Juszczyk. No matter how you get there, you get there. He's got 8, and the only guys above him, Ronnie Lott, Leo Nemolini, and Jerry Rice. Now, this is probably Juszczyk's last season with the 49ers, I would think. So that's all he's going to get, but still, that's a pretty good run, man. Kittle with 6. Is he going to catch? Nah, he's not. 3 more years is tough. He's going to be 32. I don't think he's going to catch a lot. He may get another 1 or 2, though. I mean, he's playing at such a high level. Maybe he can get to 7 or 8, be up there with Patrick Willis, the Joe Montanas, the Steve Youngs, Hall of Famers. And George Kittle, like we said, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame, too. Just great, man. How blessed have Niners fans been to be able to have George Kittle on this team? The positivity, what he's been able to do. Incredible. Anytime you get guys like that, he's one of those guys that you really wanted the Super Bowl for. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys that you're like, oh, all-time 49er. Reminds me a lot of how we felt about Patrick Willis and Frank Gore. They were just all-time guys that you wanted them to get that Super Bowl. And I think Warner's there. I think Kittle's there. They're just Niners. They've always been Niners. They've just always had a high standard. They've done so well. They carry themselves well. Just guys, you want to see them get a title. I don't know if that's going to happen, but who knows? Excuse me. Stranger things have happened. So, all right. So those are the Pro Bowlers. Again, the Pro Bowl is what it is. Tyler Huntley made the Pro Bowl a few years ago with like 4 starts. So take it what you will with the Pro Bowls, but that's where it is. That's where it stands.
When it comes to hiring, don't search for great talent. Match with them. Thanks to Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Just go to Indeed.com/radio right now And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Go to Indeed.com/radio and tell them you heard about them from this podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Come join me, Andrew Filippone.
And me, Patrick Peterson, 3-time NFL All-Pro cornerback on First and Pod for premier NFL coverage and conversations.
Our motto on the podcast is every team, every week, and we don't play favorites. Every episode, you get a glimpse of the entire National Football League with First and Pod. Follow and listen to First and Pod on Mondays and Fridays on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's better than watching your team win? Winning money while you do it. I'm Jim Costa, and on Cash the Ticket, Mike Valeni and I give you the edge to make every game playable. College football, NFL, we're breaking it all down game by game. Your podcast feed is going to be filled, and you're going to love it. You can click on the games you care about. We do it all. With our analysis, we're finding games that other people aren't talking about. We're turning every Saturday and every Sunday into days where you got a chance to win. Don't just sit on the sidelines. Cash the Ticket with us. Follow Cash the Ticket in the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Where does Kyle Shanahan stand? You know, if you listen to the show, you know that I like to kind of rank and do these lists, whether we're ranking quarterbacks, whether we're ranking head coaches. And I wanted to go through and talk about where we think Kyle Shanahan still ranks as a head coach. Because in the beginning of the season, we had him as a top 5 head coach. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But fans are down on Kyle right now. And I do think he's getting, I'm going to say he's getting too much slack right now. And two things can be true with Kyle Shanahan. He's had 4 unbelievable seasons where he's won 10-plus games, made 4 conference titles, made 2 Super Bowls. And he's had 4 bad seasons where he's lost 10-plus games. 10-plus games is a lot. Only 2 current coaches in the NFL have lost 10-plus games at least twice. Kyle's done it 4 times. Now, there's context to that. I'm not saying there's not context to that. If you look at Kyle, he took over a rebuilding team in 2017. That team had no talent on it. There was no way that team was going to have a winning season. When they got Jimmy towards the end of the year, they won 5 straight. They went 6-10. It was a lot of hope winning 5 straight. And to get to 5 straight wins with that team, it was quite an accomplishment. And they had a number of 1-score losses that season. So 6-10 with that team and to keep them close, that was probably a good job when you really look at it. The next season was a disappointment, but injuries were a large part of the reason. You lose Garoppolo. It was the 3rd game in. Nick Bosa. I'm sorry, no, this was 2018. You lose Garoppolo to the ACL that year. This was before they had Nick Bosa. Once you lose your quarterback, kind of all bets are off with that. But they expected the Niners to maybe compete for a playoff spot that year, but they were 4-12. It went pretty bad that season. But with the injury, they were able to get Nick Bosa the following year. But 4-12, that was disappointing. So Kyle's 10-22 as a head coach, and in year 3, you say, okay, they draft Nick Bosa, they bring in Deebo Samuel. You're going to have Jimmy healthy. Can you have a winning season? Well, not only did they have a winning season, they went 13-3 and made the Super Bowl. They were ahead of the game. 2020 happens. Again, injuries. Garoppolo's in and out of the lineup. That was the year that they lose Bosa in the 2nd game. Kittle's banged up. Deebo's banged up. They went 6-10, and they were some Nick Mullins crucial interceptions in the red zone away from maybe going 9-8, making the playoffs that year. They also got displaced because of COVID. They couldn't play in San Francisco, and they had to go play in Arizona to finish that season. So again, there's context there in that 10-loss season. And then the next 3 years, we know what happened. 10-7, 12-5, 13-4. And they make 3 conference championship games. They go to a Super Bowl. Anytime you're winning 35 games or whatever it was in 3 years, that's a pretty good run, man. But then this season happens. And they're 6-10 right now. See what happens last game of the season, but they're going to have another 10-plus loss season. It's frustrating because Kyle hasn't had a good season. And the things that made Kyle kind of special, not just calling the plays, not just running the offense. I hate when people relegate Kyle to that. Like, oh, well, Kyle dialed up the plays. Kyle's the head coach. Kyle's the CEO. Kyle's responsible for everything. And in previous seasons, he had put great people around him. 3 of them have gotten head coaching jobs. Robert Saleh from defensive coordinator. Then he replaces Saleh with DeMeco Ryans, who gets a head coaching job after 2 years. Mike McDaniel gets a head coaching job. So he's had these lieutenants that have done really well, and those guys have brought his coaches elsewhere. So he has had a lot of his coaches poached. That part of him being a CEO, he was phenomenal at. But recently, Steve Wilks, whoever you think of Steve Wilks, they made him a scapegoat. They got rid of him. They bring in Nick Sorensen with Brandon Staley doing whatever he's doing in the background. That hasn't worked out. Brian Schneider's been a train wreck with special teams, and special teams has never really been good under the Niners. So you look at some of these coaching decisions. You look at how special teams has been, the personnel decisions, which we talked about last show a lot. Kyle struggled with. They were great, Kyle and John. And I do put Kyle into that because this is Kyle's team. The buck stops with Kyle. And they were terrific with personnel 2017 through 2020. There were a lot of mistakes, but they brought in George Kittle and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel and Dre Greenlaw, just, all through the drafts. And they traded for Trent Williams and got guys in like that. But after that, since 2020, the drafts have been bad. And it's partially the reason why you're here now. You have your Javon Hargrave free agent signings, your Chase Young trade. You had the McCaffrey trade, which was phenomenal, but they've had things that haven't worked out as well. Trey Lance, obviously, the big one. But then they fall into Purdy. But Kyle struggled there as well. So the things that he did really well roster-wise in those first 4 years or 3-4 years or so, the last 4 here, it hasn't been as good. And these drafts haven't been as good. So that's a detractor for him as well. So Kyle went through it this year. He didn't have the best year of his career. So are we still feeling really good about him? It's been all over the place with Kyle. And again, there's context to that, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating when you have a season like this one. And he does have those losses. So in his 4 bad seasons right now, he's had 43 losses and maybe one more in those 4 seasons. That's a lot for 4 years. Now, he had the good ones offset it. And again, if you're listening to the show and you're like, well, what do you mean? Who cares about those years? He had the NFC championships. You could feel about it however you want to feel about it. It's your judgment. It's up to you. It's your opinion. But both things have been true. There have been 4 phenomenal years and 4 years that, for whatever the reasons, have been incredibly frustrating. It's been what it's been. But you look around the NFL this year. Is Kyle still a top head coach? This season to me was a tough watch. This was a bad NFL season. And I thought, was it 2020? It was the year the Eagles beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I remember I thought that was a bad season too, but this one to me was especially bad. Now listen to this. You have 9 teams with 4 wins or less entering week 18 of the 2024 season. In the previous 3 seasons, no more than 5 teams were in that category by the end of the season. So you've just had some really atrocious football this year and atrocious quarterback play. Really bad QB play in the league this year. The Jets are a joke. The Patriots, terrible. The Browns, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Giants, the Bears, the Panthers, the Saints. These are all unwatchable teams. That's almost a third of the league. All have bad quarterbacks or gotten bad quarterback play. The coaches will go through it, but it's crazy because the NFL is so popular, and the popularity is not going away, but the product this year for by and large stunk. It stunk. If you like to bet, I don't bet a lot, but I like to bet a little bit on games. If you just bet the favorites and bet against, the money line against these bad teams, you did pretty well because the teams that are bad are bad. And watching some of the QBs that they trotted out there, whether it's, Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock was awful. Desmond Ridder, you had, your Jake Hainers, just some of these guys that they trotted out there, Will Levis, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We had to watch these quarterbacks week in and week out. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew was bad. Mac Jones is out there. I guess Mac Jones did okay considering. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Jacoby Brissett. Aaron Rodgers was atrocious this year. Atrocious. You had to go out and watch that week after week. For people who like to watch all the NFL games, you watched just bad quarterback play and bad coaching. The coaches in this league stink. There are going to be so many coaches that get fired or already have been. We may have 8 or 9 coaching changes this year. But let's go through. Let's see where Kyle ranks. Because in the beginning of the season, I want to say we definitely had him in the top 5. I think it was anywhere between 3 and 5 with where he ranks for head coaches. Now, that's a tough sell for someone who just lost 10 games and had that disappointing of a season, even though they had injuries, even though they went through a lot of personal tragedy and things like that. If you watch the 49ers, they were undisciplined. They gave games away. Even before some of the injuries and the tragedies and things happened, they were still giving games away and looked undisciplined. The special teams was bad all year. The personnel on defense didn't work out. So yes, there is context and they do have built-in excuses if you want to go that route, but the product was still bad. Kyle didn't have a good season. He didn't. I don't think there's any way around that. That doesn't mean that he won't have a good season next year. He might. And if you look at who the Niners are playing next year, their schedule and look, things change every season. You never know with teams, but they're going to play. They have played the NFC West, obviously. And then the teams that you've played are the Falcons, the Panthers, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Bears, the Saints, the Bucks, the Texans, the Colts, the Giants, and the Browns. How many of those teams have a winning record? The Texans do, the Bucks do. Seattle will, the Rams. Is that it? That's it. There's a chance Atlanta will. It's 5 teams that have a winning record next year they have to play. So that's again, you don't know. Things can change from one season to the next. But right now, that last place schedule looks pretty good. I still can't believe this team finished in last place. I can't believe they lost 10 games. We were talking, if you listen to the show at the beginning of the season, because I thought there were going to be issues. I wasn't sure they were going to win 12 games. I thought they'd make the playoffs. But we said, man, if they don't make the playoffs or they have a losing record, it's a disaster. And it was a disaster. How does this team, with the guys that are on this team, if you think Kyle Shanahan's a top coach, how do you lose 10 games? I still can't believe the season happened. Like, I have to pinch myself and be like, dude, how did this happen? But here we are. Anyway, let's look at these head coaches. So let's rank, all right, guys we think are maybe above Kyle. Let's do a category of lurking. What I mean by lurking is I don't know that we can put them ahead of Kyle. The book isn't written on them yet, but they've done a really good job, and maybe they're lurking, and we'll talk about it. And then the guys that are obviously below Kyle. But when we're looking at this as well, we still have to take into account the playoffs, because there are people who may have been better regular head coaches in the regular season than Kyle, but Kyle's beaten them in the playoffs, or they just haven't won playoff games yet. Either they haven't had a chance or they haven't done it. So maybe they're lurking, but can you really put them ahead of Kyle when Kyle has 8 playoff wins and has beat them in the playoffs? I don't know that you can, because again, we have to look at everything here. So let's go through. AFC East, Sean McDermott. If you think you're frustrated with Kyle Shanahan, talk to a Bills fan. And I know the Bills have had a great season this year, and they've probably played better than most people thought they would this year because Josh Allen is Superman. But if you want to talk about frustrations, you want to talk about a coach that has maybe hit his ceiling that I don't know that he can get above it, that's Sean McDermott. The playoff games he's blown at the end, he doesn't seem like he can win the big one. His defense seems to never show up in a big game. He's helped change the culture around for the Bills. I'm not saying he's a bad head coach. He's been a winning head coach. But again, I just feel like there's a certain ceiling there that he's not going to get past. I would in no way put him over Kyle Shanahan. Mike McDaniel, no. I think he did a good job turning a bad season around this year. He'll get more of a chance. But again, when the weather gets cold, that Dolphins team doesn't play as well. He needs to win a big game at some point in the playoffs, show that he can do a little more than what he's done. He's been okay, but I mean, come on, he's not been better than Kyle. The Jets, give me a break. The Patriots, Jerod Mayo is a disaster. I don't know if they're even going to bring him back. Vrabel wants that job. If I was the Patriots, I might be one and done with Mayo and go with Vrabel. Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh. So Harbaugh is one of those guys I think that I have to put ahead of Kyle. Now, Harbaugh, he's got the Super Bowl, so he's got that pedigree there. And he's won a lot of games as a head coach. But with Harbaugh, it has been a while since it's been a while since he's won a playoff game, actually. Let's see here. He won a playoff game last year. He won a playoff game in 2020. And those are the only 2 he's had since 2014. Now, when he initially started, 2008 through 2014, he had, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10 playoff wins in the Super Bowl. But lately, he hasn't been able to get the job done in the playoffs. So, but he is still 171 and 104 as a head coach. He's won over 10 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. He's going over Kyle. I don't think there's any way around it. You got to put him there for longevity with the Super Bowl. And Tomlin, too. Tomlin's another one of those guys. It's been a while since he's won a playoff game. But Tomlin, he hasn't had a quarterback in quite some time. I mean, Roethlisberger was not Roethlisberger towards the end of his career there. He had to go with Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields. He's done a lot with them this year. But again, playoff wins for him. He actually hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. So it's been a while since Tomlin won a playoff game. Man, but 183 and 106 as a head coach. He does have the Super Bowl. And when he had the quarterback again, he was, ringing off playoff wins. He had, 5, 6, 8 playoff wins in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, an 11-year span. So I guess when he's been good in the playoffs, he's been good. But in other years, when he hasn't, he hasn't. That's pretty interesting when you really break down Tomlin. He had 3 years where he won multiple playoff games. And other than that, he has 2 playoff wins in 15 years. Wow. Isn't that crazy? Do you put him ahead of Kyle? He's got the Super Bowl. He doesn't have the losing seasons. I still think you have to. But wow, that's really interesting when you look at the playoffs. You know, we always think with Tomlin, he's just, it's Tomlin, but he's been struggling with playoff wins. Wow. Bengals, Zach Taylor, no. Browns, Kevin Stefanski, 2 Coach of the Year awards, but no. Texans, DeMeco Ryans has done a really good job. Texans have some issues this year. I think they're a top-heavy team. They've had a lot of injuries. He's still going to get them in the playoffs, but he obviously doesn't have the pedigree of Shanahan. We'll see with him. He won a playoff game last year. We'll see what he does this year. But a lot has to be done for DeMeco Ryans before we say he's Kyle Shanahan. Is he lurking? Maybe. I mean, maybe we could put him in the lurking category, depending on what you think of him, but he's certainly not ahead of Kyle. Shane Steichen, I mean, come on, the Colts were a joke this year. Guys showing up late to meetings. They're undisciplined. No way. Doug Peterson was a guy, maybe when he was with Philly, you'd say, hey, he won the Super Bowl, but he's been a train wreck with Jacksonville, so absolutely not. Tennessee Titans, what else there go? Brian Callahan, is that his name? The most nondescript franchise in the NFL. 3-13. They were a joke this year. We'll see what he does when he gets his players in there and his quarterback, but obviously not right now. Chiefs, Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid's the best coach in the NFL right now. That's not even a discussion. Of course, you put him ahead of Kyle. Jim Harbaugh. You putting Harbaugh ahead of Kyle Shanahan? Jim Harbaugh in 5 years as an NFL head coach, 54, 25, and 1. He has been in the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. We'll see what he does this year. Well, 4 out of 5 years, but he hasn't played a playoff game yet this year. He has 5 playoff wins and Super Bowl appearances in his 4 years in San Francisco. Harbaugh gets a Chargers team that typically underachieves. And I thought this year they overachieved because the Chargers went into the season. They didn't really have any receivers. You have Dobbins and Edwards at running back, older guys who had been with the Ravens. A defense that's been injured, older guys with Bosa and Mack. They only have 281 points this season. They were a disciplined team, a good team. They're going to win 10-plus games. They have won 10-plus games. Am I putting Harbaugh over Kyle? I am. You don't have to if you're listening to the show. You can do whatever you want to. But I would put Harbaugh over Kyle. Sean Payton. Let's look at Sean Payton. Is he another one like Harbaugh, Harbaugh and Tomlin, who did things a while ago and were maybe just still like, oh, he's great, but what have you done lately? No, Payton's got to go way over. Payton is 274 and coached 274 games, 169 and 105 as a head coach. He's won 10 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. May do it this year again. Overachieved this year, for sure. Overachieved with this Broncos team. He is 9-8 in the playoffs. He did have a playoff win as recent as 2020 with New Orleans. We'll see what he does this year. If they get in the playoffs, he did great with that Denver team. I think Denver's going to win this game against a Chiefs team that isn't playing their starters and get in the playoffs. He's got the Super Bowl win. He's had some really bad luck in the playoffs. You had the Diggs catch. You had the penalty that they didn't call on the Rams when they just annihilated that guy. I forget who it was, and they didn't call pass interference. New Orleans might have won the Super Bowl that year if that didn't happen. So to me, Peyton's got to go ahead of Kyle. I'm not sure that you can argue that. So Sean Payton goes ahead. So in the AFC, we have 5 coaches ahead of Kyle. And if you want to say DeMeco Ryans is lurking, but not ahead of Kyle. Let's go over to the NFC. You know, this is really interesting if you're just looking at results. And Nick Sirianni is a polarizing figure. Nick Sirianni was he was going to get fired maybe early in the season because the Eagles had the collapse at the end of last year. And they started out a little bit slow, but they've been great lately. He did surround himself with 2 really good coordinators who have gotten head coaching jobs in Gavin and Steichen. And he realized his mistakes last year with the defensive side of the ball, bringing in Patricia and whoever else he had. And they brought in Vic Fangio this year. And the Eagles have had one of the best defenses in the league recently. Listen to this. Sirianni's 47-20 as a head coach. It's a 701 winning percentage. In the playoffs, 2-3. And obviously he made the Super Bowl. Now, he made the Super Bowl with a team that beating a team in the NFC Championship game that didn't have a quarterback. But he still made it, and they almost won that Super Bowl. They almost beat the Chiefs. We'll see what happens this year. But you put Sirianni ahead of Shanahan? You say he's lurking? Man, I'm going to say he's lurking. But if you want to say, Al, I'm going to put him ahead of Kyle because he beat him in the playoffs because he's 47-20, you can do that. again, you got to look at results here. If Sirianni makes it to the Super Bowl again, he's got 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. And I know he's got a great roster. So did Kyle Shanahan when he made those runs. We don't know if he can do more with less because he's always had a great roster. Kyle seems to have had trouble doing more with less. But I'm going to put him in lurking for right now. Call me a homer, I guess. Dan Quinn's a really good head coach. Dan Quinn's won over 10 games multiple times. He made a Super Bowl. I'm not going to put him above Kyle. But, man, he's a good head coach. I think he's a good head coach. Mike McCarthy, I'm not a fan. Definitely Shanahan over him. The Giants are a joke. Dable's a joke. Dan Campbell. What do you think of Dan Campbell? Now, Kyle beat him in the playoffs, so it's really tough to put him ahead. That's the thing with Kyle. He's beat a lot of these NFC guys in the playoffs, so how can you put them ahead of him? But Dan Campbell, man, what he's done, and again, a lot of talent, but he came to a losing franchise and turned that around. 3-13-1 the first season. Then they lost, what were they, 1-7 to start or whatever it was, 1-8, finished 9-8 in 2022, 12-5, 14-2. He's 2-1 in the playoffs. He gets to or wins a Super Bowl. Do you put him ahead of Kyle? Maybe. We're going to put him as lurking right now. Wow, there's some up-and-coming coaches. For as many bad coaches as there are some up-and-coming guys. Here's another one. Kevin O'Connell, who he's only in his 3rd year. Now, he went 13-4 in his first season, and I think he did that with a lot of smoke and mirrors. But they get in the playoffs and they lose Daniel Jones and Brian Dable. So that's a big blemish on his record. 7-10 last year, had the QB injury. 14-2 and turned Sam Darnold's career around. You could say being on the 49ers helped Darnold. Maybe it did in terms of him learning how to be a pro and that sort of thing. But Kevin O'Connell deserves the credit for making him a Pro Bowl QB, for getting him what's probably going to be, he may make $40-50 million a year after this season, especially if he wins in the playoffs. But 14-2 this year, he's 34-16 as a head coach. He wins a couple playoff games this year. Wow, man. Do you like him better than Kyle? Would you put him ahead of Kyle in the years coming? I might. But for right now, if we're doing the whole picture, if we're doing the whole resume, and we've put guys like Harbaugh and Tomlin who haven't won a playoff game recently, and we're going to put them ahead of Kyle. I can't put O'Connell there yet because he hasn't done it in the playoffs, but he's lurking. He is a lurking dude for sure. Matt LaFleur is interesting because, again, he's had a lot of regular season success. And he's proved that he could do it without a prime Aaron Rodgers. 13-3, 13-3, 13-4, all with Aaron Rodgers. 8-9, that was with Aaron Rodgers as well. And then he goes 9-8, but makes a little run in the playoffs, wins the playoff game, and probably should have beat the 49ers, but didn't. Then goes 11-5 this year. He's 67-32 as a head coach, 3-4 in the playoffs. But you know who he's lost to in the playoffs 3 times? Kyle Shanahan. How are you going to put him ahead of Kyle Shanahan when he's lost to Kyle Shanahan 3 times in the playoffs? Again, we're looking at full body of work here. So can we put him in lurking? Sure. We can absolutely put him in lurking. All right. The Bears, whoever their head coach ends up being, maybe they get Ben Johnson. I hope they get Ben Johnson. I'd like to see what he does there. But obviously, Matt Eberflus and whoever, come on, not even worth discussing. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Todd Bowles has done a good job there. He is not Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't have the resume. Raheem Morris, no. The Saints, obviously not. The Panthers, Dave Canales, obviously not. Going over to the NFC West. Mike McDonald, 1 year. We don't really know anything about him. I guess he did okay this season with them. Jonathan Gannon, still young, but I don't think so. Sean McVay, I'm absolutely putting ahead of Kyle Shanahan. Have to do it. Sean McVay, let's look at his overall records here. He's gone 11-5, 13-3, 9-7, 10-6, 12-5, 5-12, 10-7, 10-6. So he's had a winning record in 7 of 8 years, 10 wins or more in 6 of 8 years. He has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He has 7 playoff wins. He beat Kyle Shanahan in the NFC Championship game. I think he's proven he can get more with less. I think he's done that the last 2 years. I got to put him ahead of Kyle. So when we're looking at body of work, everything coaches have done, where does Kyle Shanahan rank even after this bad season? I have him 7th. Do you agree with that? Do you think he's still body of work? The 7th best head coach in the NFL, is the most accomplished head coach in the NFL, however you want to look at it. And that's up to you to decide. I have him 7th, but if you want to say D'Amico's lurking, Sirianni's lurking, maybe Dan Quinn's lurking. Dan Campbell's definitely lurking. Kevin O'Connell's lurking, and maybe LaFleur's lurking. But Kyle's beat LaFleur in the playoffs. He's beat Dan Campbell in the playoffs. Sirianni beat him in the playoffs. Man, so some good coaches in the NFC coming up. AFC maybe not so much, but NFC some good coaches coming up. But Kyle's still with his he's done enough to earn. Still saying he's a top 10 coach in the league, top 7 here from what I have. Again, if you want to say, well, Al, Kevin O'Connell's a better coach than him this season. He was for sure. Dan Campbell's a better head coach than him. This season he was. We'll see with Campbell too. Kyle's lost lieutenants. If Campbell loses Ben Johnson, if he loses Aaron Glenn, if he loses his coordinators, can he replace them? Can they still stay as one of the top teams in the league? That remains to be seen. So the book's not written on a lot of these guys. A lot more of the book is written with Kyle, with McVay, with Peyton, with Harbaugh, with both Harbaughs, with Tomlin, with Reed. So some things remain to be seen. But with Kyle, look, you can be mad at him. I think he's had a bad year. I'm annoyed. But body of work, you have to go into next season and say, okay, odds are we're probably going to have a better year next year. Can they fix it personnel-wise? We'll see. But odds are going to have a better season, and odds are the Niners will be back, and Kyle will have another winning year. And Kyle's probably still going to be here for a little bit. If next year doesn't go well, that's a different situation. But with the schedule, and you would think they can hopefully bounce back and at least contend for the playoffs again. But we'll see with some of these guys. The NFC is going to be tough. How many coaches did I say here were Sirianni, Quinn, Campbell, O'Connell, LaFleur in a conference where you already have McVay? That's 6 head coaches. 6 head coaches who we think are legit or appear to be legit, along with Kyle. It's half the conference. And if Ben Johnson goes in and he ends up being a good coach, you never know with some of these other guys that get brought in. So the NFC is going to be tough. There's some good coaches there. There's some good programs, but Kyle's certainly done his part in 4 of the 8 years anyway to be in that discussion. But whatever. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think he is in the top 7. If you think I was too easy on him. If you think I was too hard on him. Let me know what you think. Again, this is your show too. Make your own opinion and give me a shout. Let me know what you think. But anyway, appreciate y'all listening. For Al, subscribe. Thank you.
9-0-3. 1, 2, 3.
.2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.